What do you think of Andrew Tateism then?
So as a general rule, I don't comment on people that I don't speak to.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me the features of what you're talking about.
Okay, so the recent wave of internet masculine influencers who have like Bugattis and lots of women and sports cars, and there's many of them. There's many of them, and they seem to be resonant for some kind of reason. That are kind of saying that the way to be a man is to have loads of money, lots of women, these kind of cars, physical strength, and there's just this huge sort of generation of young, typically men, that are now disciples of that religion.
Yeah. So I think if you dislike that toxic masculinity, what we need to understand is it's the people who hate that toxic masculinity that are driving these people towards it. So I know this is kind of crazy. So what's happened is this has grown, right? And as it's grown, what have we done? We've demonized these people. We've said these people are bad. And as we demonize them, what's happened? They've grown stronger. So this is something that's very important to understand. If you are a man and you say, I am suffering today, what is the response that you're going to get?
Shut up.
Absolutely.
Not in those exact words, but that's whatever the words are, that's what they mean.
Now, I want us to be very, very careful, right? So if you are listening to Steven say people tell you to shut up, and your first thought as a listener is, no, that's not true, that's the problem. So if people agree with you, they understand what you're saying. But if they disagree with you, that's the problem. We literally have a man who is telling us right now that your experience is when I say I'm suffering, people tell you to shut up. And then people are going to be judging you for saying that. And they're going to be saying, no, that's not true.
They're going to be saying, shut up.
Absolutely. Right? So this is exactly the problem. So men are struggling right now, and the rest of the world says, no, you're not. You're privileged. You're a man. There's a patriarchy. And I'm not commenting on the sociology of it. There is a patriarchy, whatever. Men have many advantages in life. I've experienced many advantages of being a man. It's absolutely true. Let's not go there. I'm talking about the individual experience of men. So there is one group of people on the planet who says, yes, your life does suck. And that's these toxic masculine people. They're the only people that truly validate men's experiences. Because everyone else says, why are you complaining? And these guys say, yeah, you're a fucking loser. What are you going to do about it? They at least meet you where you're at. And they say, yes, your life is hard, and I will show you a way to make it better. Whereas the rest of the world says, no, your life isn't hard. What are you complaining about? And I've seen this as a doctor. I've seen patients who are complaining about pain, women who are complaining about pain because they have an internal bleed within the wall of their uterus that cannot get detected. And they're saying, I'm hurting, I'm hurting, I'm hurting, and we ignore this person's pain. And that's when things go bad. So for years and years and years, we have ignored the struggles of men. And there's one group on the planet who accepts them with open arms. And the more that we demonize them, so when someone starts believing in this toxic masculinity, what is the response? Do people ever ask, like, help me understand what your life is like? Like, what do you like about this person? Because everyone's going to them for a reason, but we never bother to ask, why are you listening to this person? What does this mean to you? We see these posts all the time in our community. My boyfriend is getting into this stuff. My son is getting this stuff. How do I stop it? Hold on a second. Don't try to stop it. Understand it first. Because everyone's trying to stop it and no one is bothering to listen to what the experience of these men are. And that's why it's getting worse and worse and worse as we try to stop it.
So if I'm the mother of a son who is watching a lot of these sort of toxic male influences online, what would be a better approach versus just banning the computer and telling them that that's toxic and not to look at it?
Help me understand what you like about this. What is it like to be a man in today's day and age? How do you feel about yourself? How does it feel knowing that 70 to 80% of women want you to make more money than them, and yet 60% of people who graduate from college are women? So men are living in a world today where there are impossible expectations to meet. And so, like, what is it like to be someone who fundamentally has no chance at success? Right? These are the kinds of things that you need to say to these people. You need to give them an alternate place to go where they can be heard and helped, supported, and understood. See, anytime we make a judgment, our mind already has a conclusion. There's nothing left to learn anytime we're judgmental. So what do we do to all these people who are toxic men? We even create the word toxic. We literally label them as bad in some way. And I'm not saying that the behavior isn't toxic. But what I'm trying to point out is that even in our language, there is so much harsh judgment. So I once had a patient.
We both just did it, didn't we?
Absolutely. So I once had a patient who was smearing feces all over the school. So adolescent kid, right? And when you have a kid who's literally taking a shit and wiping it on the walls and stuff, what happens? The kid gets punished. Kid gets punished again and again and again. The one really sad thing is no one ever asks, why are you doing this? What's going on inside you? Because healthy kids don't do this. It's only kids who've been traumatized in some way. And as I've worked with incels, as I've worked with people who are toxically masculine, it always starts with trauma. And when I say always, this is a clinical experience, but I'm talking about 100%. So 100% of people start on this path by getting hurt in some way, by getting taken advantage of in some way, by sacrificing something and not getting something in return. And they have their share of responsibility too. I'm not saying that they're hapless victims, but I think that people who are raised with love and compassion and do have connections don't go down this road.
You're so passionate about this, aren't you? Because I feel like your eyes have seen in your practice some pretty heartbreaking things.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, see, unless we are willing to be what these people need, they're going to continue going down the toxic masculinity route. Someone needs to start offering these people safe haven. No matter what they say, or not no matter, I think there should be consequences for actions. But so this is as someone who's worked in a jail, right? So, and this is what's kind of interesting if you really think about it. People will judge me for talking to or even trying to support people who are toxically masculine. And they're like, oh my God, you're such an asshole. You're giving these people a platform. How could you make the world a worse place? And then I tell them I worked in a jail for 3 months. And they're like, oh, look at you. You're so compassionate. You're working with these people who are like criminals. And like, oh my God. I don't think they realize that anyone you see on social media is 10 times better than the people that I worked with in jail. These are people who are actual pedophiles, actual rapists, right? Not just talking about it. Maybe the people on social media are too. I don't know. And so it's really interesting the way that our mind automatically judges things. And so if we really want to fix this problem, and I think we need to fix this problem, it's just my take. I mean, I'm not I'm a big fan of like compassion and trying to support other human beings. I'm not saying that that's always the right answer. I think sometimes you may need things like war or violence or whatever. I mean, there may be causes for it. But generally speaking, I think that like demonizing these people isn't working.
Is there anything else that we haven't covered in the remedies to this sort of male crisis? We've talked about getting more in touch with yourselves. Is there anything else? Do we need more positive role models, or is it really not about the external at all?
No, I mean, so I think all that stuff is true. So we know that, for example, like there's like a loneliness crisis and things like that. I think that it's not just role models, like we need individual responsibility. So like, for example, everyone will say, yeah, like I know it's a real tragedy that men don't have friends, but it's not my job to fix. I will hear this from both men and women, that like it's a real tragedy, but it's not my responsibility. It's sad that this thing happened, but it's not my which makes sense, right? No human being is responsible for another human being. But then the question kind of becomes like, okay, let's play that tape through to the end. What happens to that person? Whose responsibility is it? So if you look at a lot of what's going on with men right now, it's loneliness, it's isolation, it's touch starvation, it's suicidality.
Sexlessness as well.
Sexlessness. And it's no individual person's responsibility. But the real problem with this is that these are not problems that men can solve on their own. This is exactly why this is the problem that men are experiencing. Because as men, we are taught to be independent. We are taught to be, you should fix everything on your own. And so men have fixed all of the things that we can fix on our own. The only thing that's left is the things that we must rely on other people for, right? So no one's complaining about, I mean, a lot of men are obese, but there's not like an obesity, there is a crisis, but that's not what's bothering people. That's not where we're losing the war. We're not losing the war on baldness, right? So there are lots of things as a man that you can fix in your own life. It's just the real challenge is that no one is willing to take responsibility for any level of connection with men. And so that's not something that is going to get fixed because you need another human being to hug you. Like you can't hug yourself. It just doesn't work. So my area of focus tends to be on introspection because I think that's like really, really powerful, but there's all kinds of other stuff that's important. Mentorship, role models, all that kind of stuff. But I think ultimately through introspection, you can attain complete peace, no matter who you are, what your path is, circumstances, I think it's kind of like the silver bullet, which is what the Buddha discovered.
So are you saying there that as a society, we should take on more of the responsibility for some of these big fundamental issues that men and people in crisis can't solve for themselves?
Subtly, no. Not a society. Because as a society, who's part? No. I mean you. I mean, your listeners as individuals need to take responsibility. And it's not that you have to take responsibility. It's not fair to you to be responsible for someone else. But unless everyone who is listening to this podcast goes out and literally hugs a man, no one else is going to do it. Because if you don't do it, who's going to do it? You can't rely on society. We've been relying on society to fix the problem. It's not working. Society can't do shit.
So you're saying me?
Me?
Forget
Yes.
society. Don't wait for government to have some kind of intervention.
How's it working out?
Not great.